Jason woke up early that Tuesday morning with coffee brewing and roses on the counter, smiling. He had been with Megan for 3 years, and today marked their anniversary of the day they first met at that downtown bookstore where she pretended to love mystery novels just to talk to him longer. He texted her good morning with a heart emoji and got back 3 dots that disappeared then reappeared then vanished completely, which was strange, but he brushed it off thinking she was probably busy with her new promotion at Henderson & Co., where she had been working crazy hours lately under her boss Richard Montgomery. Megan finally replied 2 hours later with a simple "busy day babe," and Jason felt that small sting of disappointment but convinced himself that success required sacrifice and he wanted to support her dreams even if it meant lonely evenings and cancelled dinner plans. What we can learn here is that sometimes our love makes us blind to patterns that others might see clearly, and we excuse behavior that deserves our attention because we fear losing someone we have invested our hearts into completely. At his own desk across town, Jason worked as a project coordinator for a tech startup where his dedication earned respect but modest pay, while Megan now pulled 6 figures after Richard personally chose her for senior analyst despite her having less experience than others, sighing. That evening Jason planned a surprise dinner at Giovanni's, the Italian place where they had their first official date, but when he called Megan to confirm she sounded flustered and breathless, saying she had an emergency client meeting that could not wait. He heard something in the background that sounded like music and laughter, not the sterile conference room atmosphere she described. Confused, but he swallowed his suspicion and told her he understood because that is what supportive partners do, right? Jason sat alone at Giovanni's that night with 2 glasses of wine and melting candles. Sad expression, watching couples around him share intimate moments while his phone stayed silent, and his heart grew a little heavier with doubts he did not want to name. Jason started noticing things he had trained himself to ignore, like how Megan's phone was always face down now, or how she jumped whenever notifications came through late at night claiming they were just work emails that needed immediate responses from Richard personally. One Friday evening Jason decided to surprise her at the office with takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant, excited. But when he arrived at Henderson & Co., the receptionist looked uncomfortable and said Megan had left 2 hours ago for a supposed site visit that would take all evening. Jason's stomach dropped because Megan had texted him 30 minutes ago saying she was stuck in back-to-back meetings until 9 and would call him after, but the receptionist's nervous eyes told him something was very wrong here. He drove home slowly, his mind racing through possibilities he did not want to consider, and when he pulled up to their apartment complex he saw Megan's car already there, which meant she had lied about the site visit entirely. Breathing heavily. What we learn here is that small lies often hide bigger truths, and when someone starts protecting their privacy more aggressively than before, it usually means they have something significant to hide from the people who trust them most. Inside their apartment, Megan was showering, and her phone sat on the kitchen counter lighting up with a text from her that read, "Tonight was incredible as always baby, we need to be more careful though." Jason's hands trembled as he stared at those words, feeling his entire world tilt sideways, shaking. And before he could stop himself he opened the message thread, finding months of exchanges filled with intimate photos, dinner reservations, hotel confirmations, and declarations of passion that made him physically sick. He quickly took screenshots, sending them to his own phone, then deleted the evidence of his discovery because something inside him shifted from heartbreak to cold, calculated fury that demanded more than just confrontation. When Megan emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, smiling innocently, she kissed his cheek and asked about his day like nothing was wrong, like she had not just destroyed 3 years of trust and love with her selfish choices and calculated deceptions. Jason smiled back and said his day was fine, hiding pain, because he realized that exposing her required patience and strategy, not emotional outbursts that would let her control the narrative or make him look like the jealous, unstable boyfriend who overreacted. Gathering the storm. Over the next 3 weeks Jason became someone he barely recognized, watching Megan leave for work each morning, forcing smiles, while he systematically built a case that would leave no room for denial or manipulation when the truth finally emerged into the light. He created a separate cloud account where he stored every screenshot, every suspicious credit card charge from hotels and restaurants, and every instance where Megan's location sharing was conveniently turned off during her supposed overtime hours at the office. Jason also started researching Richard Montgomery, discovering he was married with 2 teenage daughters, disgusted, and had a reputation for being a family man who spoke at church events and donated generously to local charities while secretly destroying lives behind closed doors. Through a former colleague who still worked at Henderson & Co., Jason learned that Megan was not the first woman Richard had pursued, and that at least 2 other employees had left the company quietly after similar situations that were covered up by HR and generous severance packages. What we learn here is that people who abuse power rarely do it just once, and organizations that protect predatory behavior create environments where betrayal and manipulation become normalized and victims are silenced through money and fear of reputations being destroyed. Jason contacted one of those former employees named Sarah, who initially was reluctant to talk, nervous. But after hearing his story, she opened up about how Richard had promised her promotions and special treatment while having an affair that ended when his wife almost discovered them. Sarah provided Jason with emails and documents showing a pattern of favoritism toward women Richard was involved with, including unusual bonus payments, project assignments that bypassed qualified candidates, and performance reviews that were clearly inflated compared to actual work produced. Meanwhile, at home, Megan continued her double life, bringing Jason flowers occasionally, fake affection, and talking about their future together, completely unaware that he knew everything and was carefully planning the moment when her carefully constructed lies would collapse spectacularly. One evening, Megan mentioned casually that Richard was such a great mentor, lying smoothly, and that she felt lucky to work under someone so dedicated to developing talent, and Jason had to excuse himself to the bathroom where he gripped the sink, controlling rage, reminding himself that patience would deliver justice more effectively than anger ever could their exposure. Jason knew the quarterly company meeting was scheduled for next Friday, where Richard would present results and Megan would be highlighted for her exceptional performance numbers that everyone knew came from favoritism, not actual merit or talent. He spent days crafting an anonymous email that would go to every single employee at Henderson & Co., including the executive board, the HR director, and Richard's own assistant, who Jason discovered through LinkedIn was fiercely loyal to Richard's wife after years of covering for him. The email was simple and devastating, determined. It contained a timeline of Megan and Richard's affair with screenshots of their messages, hotel receipts showing company credit card misuse, and a comparison of Megan's performance reviews before and after the relationship began that revealed obvious bias. Jason also included Sarah's testimony and documents about the pattern of behavior, with a note that read, Henderson & Co. employees deserve to know how promotions are really earned here and whether leadership operates with integrity or deception that damages hard-working, honest people. He scheduled the email to send Thursday night at 8 p.m., hands shaking, giving everyone time to read it before the big meeting and ensuring maximum impact when people arrived Friday morning buzzing with gossip and demanding answers from leadership. What we learn here is that secrets maintained through lies and power imbalances eventually crumble when truth is exposed systematically, and that people who betray trust must face consequences, especially when their actions harm not just partners but entire professional communities built on fairness. Thursday evening, Megan came home excited about tomorrow's presentation, completely unaware, talking about the new dress she bought and how Richard told her she was destined for VP level within 2 years if she kept performing at this level. Jason watched her practice her speech, expressionless, and felt nothing but cold emptiness where love used to live, because the woman he had cherished was revealed to be someone capable of profound selfishness and calculated manipulation without apparent guilt or conscience. That night, as Megan slept peacefully beside him, breathing softly, Jason lay awake watching the clock tick toward 8 p.m., then 8:15, then 8:30, when his phone buzzed with confirmation that the email had been delivered successfully to 243 recipients. He finally fell asleep around midnight, knowing that tomorrow would bring destruction and exposure, but feeling strangely peaceful, exhaling slowly. Because sometimes justice requires difficult choices, and loving someone does not mean protecting them from consequences they earn through their own deliberate actions and betrayals. The aftermath. Friday morning arrived with Megan's phone exploding with calls and texts before her alarm even rang. Panicking, and Jason watched her face drain of color as she read message after message from colleagues, friends, and HR demanding explanations for what everyone now knew. She looked at Jason with wild, desperate eyes, crying, asking if he had seen the email that someone sent, and he simply nodded, saying yes, he had seen it, and that apparently everyone at Henderson & Co. now understood exactly how her promotion really happened. Megan's hands shook as realization dawned that Jason knew everything, sobbing, and she tried to explain that it just happened that Richard pursued her aggressively and she got caught up in attention and promises, but her words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Jason stood up and calmly told her he had known for weeks, voice steady, that he had watched her lie to his face repeatedly, and that her choices revealed who she truly was beneath the person he thought he loved and trusted completely. Within hours, Richard was placed on administrative leave pending investigation, career crumbling. His wife was seen at the office demanding answers, and Megan was called into emergency meetings with HR and legal teams who were scrambling to contain the scandal spreading through the company. By afternoon, Megan was also suspended, devastated, her reputation destroyed among colleagues who now saw her success as unearned and her character as fundamentally compromised by ambition that valued advancement over integrity, loyalty, and basic human decency. Jason packed his belongings from their apartment that evening, quietly, while Megan sat on the couch staring at nothing and occasionally whispering apologies that meant absolutely nothing, because sorry cannot undo months of calculated betrayal and intimate deception. What we ultimately learn from this story is that betrayal rooted in selfish ambition destroys not just relationships but reputations, careers, and self-respect, and that choosing temporary pleasure or advancement over genuine love and integrity carries costs that exposure makes painfully permanent and inescapable. As Jason drove away from the apartment complex for the last time, peaceful sadness, he understood that some bridges must burn completely and that exposing truth is not revenge but rather necessary accountability when people abuse trust, power, and love without conscience. Meghan's affair with Richard became legendary at Henderson & Co. as a cautionary tale, whispered in hallways, about what happens when ambition blinds people to ethics, and Richard eventually resigned quietly while his marriage entered counseling that would probably fail given the depth of his betrayals. Jason moved forward, slowly rebuilding his life, healing gradually, knowing he had acted with dignity even in heartbreak, and that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal is not violence or rage but simply ensuring that truth replaces lies and consequences find those who earn them completely. The office Christmas party that year happened without Meghan or Richard, notably absent, and Jason heard through former contacts that Meghan had left the city entirely unable to escape the reputation that followed her everywhere, reminding everyone that shortcuts built on lies eventually lead nowhere good. In the end, Jason learned that love requires more than just feeling reflective. It requires choosing someone worthy of that vulnerability and recognizing when loyalty becomes enabling and when exposing wrong becomes necessary, even when it hurts, because protecting liars only creates more victims down the road ahead.